Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to all you lovely people attending from various parts of the world. It's my pleasure and my privilege to welcome each and every one of you for this live webinar on a very interesting topic, Principles of Anterior Aesthetics. We're very sorry for what happened yesterday. There was a slight technical glitch and hence we couldn't conduct the session yesterday. However, we're back today with a bang. And sure enough, this event is going to be one of the most memorable events and a live webinar that you've ever attended. Thank you for joining us. Today, we have a very special speaker amongst us. Most of y'all know him. For the ones who don't know him, he's Dr. Ritul Agarwal. Dr. Ritul graduated from the prestigious Manipal Dental College. Following that, he did his master's in prosthodontics and implantology from Savita University. He then cleared the membership in prosthodontics examination from the Royal College of Surgeons, Edinburgh in the year 2011. He is a member and a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons based in Edinburgh, UK. Currently, he is also an examiner for the Royal College of Surgeons, Edinburgh for the membership in prosthodontics examination. He is also a fellow of the International Congress of Oral Implantologists. Currently, Dr. Agarwal is working with Mediclinic in Dubai, one of the largest healthcare providers in the world. He is a lecturer and conducts courses and workshops on veneers and smile designing in UAE. I'm also happy to tell you that Dr. Agarwal is a Lifetime Achievement Awardee of the world's top 100 doctors in dentistry. Congratulations to you, Dr. Ritul. And without much further ado, I now request you to kindly begin with the much awaited webinar today. That is, the topic is Principles of Anterior Aesthetics. Over to you, Dr. Ritul.
Thank you, Ruben. Good morning, everybody. I would like to welcome every one of you who has taken time out of their busy schedules and wanting to attend this webinar. I would like you to just let me know if you have any questions. So you can just put it in the question and answer box, and we will discuss all of your questions during the end of the webinar. Mr. Ruben has already introduced me quite a bit. Just to make it a little bit more clear, I work in Mediclinic, and my clinic is located in Dubai Mall. So this is where I work currently. I am also associated with the Royal College of Surgeons, Edinburgh, and I am one of their examiners for the membership in prosthodontics examination, which is generally conducted twice or thrice a year. Anybody who is a prosthodontist, periodontist, endodontist is kind of, I would like to motivate them to kind of give this exam. It's a good exam, good experience, and if you have it, I mean, if you have the degree, it just added feather to your career. All right, so in this webinar, we are going to have a discussion on the what of smile designing, the why, the how, and the when. Before I begin anything, there's one thing that I would like to share with you is anything that you do in life is just like an exam, out of which 70% is what you should ideally know. People like to go for the 30% of what is going to come in the paper, and they waste their time. And the person who dedicates the 70% is the person who's going to clear that exam. It goes with everything. So now the thing is, you see these webinars, scientific presentations, taking you through digital platforms, taking you through new technology. But the fact is, I mean, I don't think many people can really have their hands on it. So you see these webinars, you see these kind of fancy stuff, even I see them. And sometimes, you know, they demotivate me rather than motivating me, making me think that, you know, I'm not able to do much of dentistry without having these gadgets in my hand. So I would like you to listen to this webinar and understand that even if you don't have the latest technology in your hand, even if you don't have digital access, I mean, you can still provide a very good result to a patient, which can be predictable, and it can also be foreseeable even on the first day of the appointment. I would take you to a few of the steps which are required. I mean, it is not possible for me to take you through the full protocol, which is almost like an 11-hour lecture, which I take during my courses. But this is just the basis of how we go about it. And in the end, we will see some couple of cases that I did so that you get an idea of the full protocol. All right. Everybody knows the world has definitely changed quite a bit after this coronavirus pandemic, and dentistry is probably not going to be the same from now on. And I don't know when I'm also going to get a patient for cosmetic dentistry, as people might not have enough finances to get it done. They might not be motivated enough to get it done, but still it is our duty to tell them what they can achieve. Just for a little bit, I mean, logos might change. Starbucks can come up with a logo with a mask on it. Corona might need a new name. Goodyear has become bad here. And same like booking.com is just looking.com because you really can't go anywhere. Just a small thing. I mean, but dentistry also will drastically change after everything kind of becomes normal. All right. So the topic for today is personalized smile design. So how do we design a smile? What are the things we need to look for to have a result that is predictable and you know that the patient is going to step happy outside the office? So in personalized smile design, there's a small word hidden called persona. Now, persona is how a person wants to look at themselves when they go out and present themselves to the world. There might nothing be natural to it. It might completely be a fiction. It might be a part natural, part fiction. You know, politicians, film actors, actresses, they all have a different persona outside when they step into the public, and they might be a totally different person at home. So once you design a smile, you need to check with the patient what kind of smile they are looking for, what profession they are, what is their psyche. So everything kind of helps you design the smile. All right. So as per Patzer, he wrote a book which says that why looks matter more than anything else. And even in the looks, he classified that the mouth is the main thing that matters the most compared to eyes, hair, nose. So if a person has a good smile, I mean, things changed beyond what you can really think of. I'm not saying that, you know, doing aesthetic dentistry is the only way forward. I mean, there are people who have got crooked teeth, but their smile is beautiful. You would not want to change anything in that. So it's not like every patient that walks into your clinic, you don't see the age, you don't see, and you just start selling yourself with veneers. That's not what really matters. What matters is somebody who's not really confident in their life, who would want things to get a little better. Those are the best people you can really target. Not every patient, but yeah. And second thing which I would want to add on is you really need a team. So if we don't have a good team with you, it kind of becomes a little difficult to handle the case. So my wife is an orthodontist, so I take her help, she takes my help. We both work in tandem and it kind of gives us good results in most of our cases. All right. A very good topic for these days is digital dentistry. Everybody is like, go digital, go digital. I agree that this is the way forward, but this is not the only way forward, I feel. Still, analog dentistry has got its own benefits. You have got its own advantages. So even if you don't have an access to a scanner, don't be disheartened because you can still do good work. And also the problem with digital dentistry with softwares like smile designing softwares and, you know, these softwares which will promise a good smile to the patient. So you take pictures, you do the digital smile designing, you spend money on it, you pay somebody to do the smile designing for you, you show it to the patient, patient is like, wow, this looks wonderful. But when you actually set and plan the treatment, you might not be able to deliver the same result. And then the patient will always have that record and you will be in problem. So it's rather doing analog way. So once you actually work in the mouth, you know which tooth will require what kind of treatment. So you can better prepare the patient rather than just doing a digital smile design, which is a two-dimensional kind of thing. And patient will be like, wow, I want this. And when you really do it, it won't be the same. So, and also, I mean, you can do digital smile designing on so many softwares without spending any penny from your pocket. You can use Photoshop, you can use Keynote, PowerPoint. What I use is a software called Affinity. It's a pretty good software, almost like Photoshop, but it kind of helps me in giving a good, a kind of good smile design before we do anything in the patient. All right, the main thing that you should take home from this webinar is direct mockup. Any patient you have, even the technicians, even the assistants, to start how it looks is you should do something called as direct mockup. Let me try to take this box down if I can. All right. So You have these three patients, which I have, okay? Face is half hidden, of course, due to consent problems, but you have these patients, the patients came to me, 5 minutes it took, less than 5 minutes actually. So you need to have any composite, you can buy any composite, preferably a little whiter shade, take a little bit of composite, roll it in your hand, adapt it on the teeth. You don't have to do any etching, bonding. It's just building up your teeth as per the tips that I'm going to give you throughout this webinar. So you do this mock-up, you take some pictures, you don't show the mirror to the patient. In the end, when the patient sees those photos, you have already sold yourself. Patient will get the veneers done if they can afford it. You might waste 10-15 minutes of your time, but don't think it as a wastage. Out of 10, even if one patient get convinced and get it done, you have kind of covered enough composite for it. So this is a good technique. You just have to not do much. It can mainly be done for additive cases. So not really too much for cases which are having a teeth little proclined or you need to reduce from somewhere. But in most of the patients, it's mainly additive because over a period of time, everybody has lost their tooth structure. So you really need to build it up, take some photos, and trust me, most of the patients, if you increase the length of the tooth only by 1.5 millimeter, everything changes. Even the bulk is not really that important when it comes to direct mock-up. But it's just that you keep repeating it, keep doing it again and again. By the time you are like taking not more than 5 minutes to do 6 teeth. And if you're able to do that, I'm telling you, you'll be in a better situation to convince patients more than any digital smile design or anything. It's what they see. They will take photos of their own. They will share it with their friends. And, probably by the next week, they'll be in your clinic that, let's do it. So, yeah, but yeah, of course, you need to plan the treatment. This is just to convince the patient. All right. So we need to know, because our eyes will see what our brain knows. This was kind of being taught to me from beginning when I was learning for my undergraduation, post-graduation, that unless your brain knows it, your eyes cannot see it. So here is the first logo of Yogo Australia. So if you see it, the negative space between the legs of that lady is actually the map of Australia. So if you would have not known it, you would have seen it's just like any picture without noticing that, there's actually the map of Australia hidden in between the legs. Also in Baskin Robbins, the 30BR is actually 31 flavors of ice cream. That is the Baskin Robbins tagline, that they have 31 flavors of ice cream when they actually open a shop. And finally, in a logo of Blade, you actually have a knife hidden in the negative space of A. So you need to know the basics before you can actually jump into anything more complex. If your basics are not clear, then even if you know digital, even if you know n number of things, you might not be able to deliver the best result. See a picture, these are common lines you would have seen in n number of times now, but you can draw these lines. That's what I'm telling you. You can draw these lines on any software, get a basic idea of what is wrong, so that you can prepare yourself. Okay, now these are the things that I have to do. Sit with the paper, sit with a pen, draw these lines on the computer, and write down the problems that you see. So if you see in this, like the tooth shape is not right, the gingival harmony is not good. So you can make these points, and then when you actually talk to the patient, you will have things to talk to. So generally how I work is a patient comes to me, I take some pictures, I sit at home, do some groundwork, and then call the patient for the next visit for the direct mock-up. So I've prepared myself that I have to talk and do these things for my patient to be happy. And also it's not all about veneers. This is again important thing. We can do smile designing with anything. So it's not veneers, it cannot be just direct restorations. It always will be a combination of treatments. So a case like this, I mean, of course, a good case for veneers, but do all patients afford it? Not really. So in this case, what I did was just some composite on my tooth number 9 and 10, a crown on tooth number 7, and some polishing and scaling. So we kind of was quite happy with the end result. The crown was, of course, Emax, and the composite which I generally use is either Tokiyama or Shofu. All right, let's see 3 patients of mine. We have these 3 patients who come to my clinic. None of them came to me with veneers as a requirement, but all 3 of them were converted to a veneer patient. Okay, how I do it? Let's evaluate the three preoperative smiles. So we have a first patient who has an aorostis, of course, not very happy with her teeth. There's a big problem there, that is the center crown on tooth number 9 with a slightly grayish gingival hue, and she is not happy with the shade of her teeth. What is the basic we can do is change that crown, do some whitening, and assume that the patient gets happy. Second patient came for just a scaling, but I saw the canted midline. We spoke about it. I'll tell what we did and how we managed. Third patient came to me with a broken tooth only. Again, I converted it to a full mouth rehabilitation by just doing a direct mock-up in 5 minutes. I'm not telling you the lie. This is what actually happens. So I've told you the problems that we had in these patients compared to their preoperative phases. These are the post-operative smiles of those 3 patients. The order has been changed a little bit, but the first patient is the same. So we did veneers for her in upper 10 teeth. We had done some whitening in the inside of tooth number 9, grayish hue from the gingiva. Second patient was a full mouth rehabilitation, and third patient was 10 veneers done to correct the canted midline. Post-operative phases, they all look quite happy, and the end result is, I think that's quite nice. Preoperative and post-operative smiles, we corrected most of the things in the first patient, gave her whiter teeth. She wanted white teeth, we gave her white teeth, though I am not in a favor of doing this kind of white teeth, but patient is God. So when the patient says, I want white, we take a consent form, get the patient sign on it that I want this shade, and then we do it. And then the ball is in the patient's court. Once I cement it, the patient doesn't like it, it's not really, my problem at that time. Of course, it's my problem, but I don't take it. It's not, patient cannot blame me for that. The second patient is, we did a full mouth rehabilitation. This is only the upper teeth when I finished. The lower, we did work later. And third patient, we did almost 10 veneers, and we corrected the buccal corridor. We corrected the midline, and also we gave her a little whiter teeth that she was wanting. And all this happens, all the selling happens in the first 5 minutes. So if you do a good direct mock-up, you don't need digital smile designing, you don't need anything. You just need to have a good technician, good lab, and good pair of hands. And that's all that you really need. Comparison of the preoperative and postoperative pictures of the patients. And yep, we changed quite a bit. We're going to discuss a couple of cases in the end. So you see the full protocol, how I go from the start to the end. All right, so you have the intraoral pictures of the 3 patients that you saw. Some are veneers, some are crowns. It all depends on how we actually do the work. What really matters is the central dominance. Second thing is the incisal projection. Third thing is the central dominance, that is the shape of the central incisor and the tip of the teeth. Now, if I put the smile of, if I put this smile design patient to this patient's teeth, it won't look good. Each patient has got its different characteristics, which you need to judge based on the patient's discussion, how you talk to the patient. And then based on that, you decide on what kind of teeth you really want. So we need to see the dominance, we need to see the projection, the tooth shape, and the angulation. And all together, this is generally called as congruence of smile. So it's like the language of smile or the congruence of smile, whatever, you can give it any fancy word. So you need to have different patients, you need to have a different incisal projection. Some patients will have to go for a triangular projection. Some patients you will have to go for a semicircular projection, and some will be a straight projection. Projection is basically the transition between the central to the premolar, and how you really would want to have that will depend on the characteristics or the persona of the patient. In some patients who are kind of willing to pay and wanting to go the extra mile, I can get 2 or 3 mock-ups done for the patient. So when the patient gets convinced for the direct, after the direct treatment, I send it to the lab for an indirect mock-up, and I can ask the lab to do 2 or 3 different mock-ups with different designs. And then when we do the indirect mock-up, we give the opportunity to the patient to choose what kind of teeth he would be wanting. So you have the dominance. Some people want really dominant centrals, and some people don't like really dominant. So you have to really merge. It again depends on the psychology of the patient, which is going to come very soon. Tooth angulation, you should know that the centrals are slightly distally tilted or straight. The laterals have got the maximum distal tilt, and the canines again have a lesser distal tilt compared to your laterals. So if your lab technician is not good, if you're not able to do a good mock-up, then it becomes a problem. Tooth shape, it can be square, it can be oval, it can be triangular, it can be rectangular. We're going to discuss in detail about how to decide the tooth shape and size. There was a person called Carl Jung. He was a professor, and he went around the world and he spoke to a lot of people, local populations, and he realized that few symbols are universal, which he called archetypes. So symbols are like anything vertical signifies strength. So if you see anything tall, anything really long, it all signifies strength. Anything horizontal, it signifies stability. Anything which is inclined, it signifies dynamism, and anything rounded, it will be classified as delicate. So these four things automatically come to the strong, the calm, the dynamic, delicate. Based on the personality of the patient, you have a strong patient, you have a calm patient, you have a dynamic patient, and a delicate patient. So as and when you speak to the patient, you keep trying to judge the personality of the patient. So you have to be a little bit good in judging the people based on how they behave with you, how they behave with the assistant, how they are behaving with the front desk staff. So you get an idea what kind of a personality a patient has. So these are the four kind of teeth shapes that we know. It's a strong, the calm, the dynamic, and the delicate. So if you have a strong patient, you give a long teeth. If you have a calm patient, you give a squarish teeth. Coming to the concept of visagism. So Philip Hallowell with Galip Gurel, they came up with the concept of visagism. It is based on emotions, identity, behavior, sociology, many things. So it's all depends on the personality of the patient. So my smile designing is all how I was taught by Coachman, how I was taught by Galip Gurel, how I was taught in my college. Based on all what I have learned, I have realized that one size doesn't fit everybody. Everybody needs to have their own teeth. You need to really customize the smile for every patient. So you have four kind of people as we have discussed. Each has got their own characteristics. Of course, dynamic has more extrovert, calm is more spiritualized, maybe delicate is organized, artistic, and you will judge this by seeing what kind of patient you are seeing actually. Taking four good characteristics of a series called Game of Thrones. I mean, I'm pretty sure most of you would have watched it. And if you have not watched it, it's all right. It's not a big deal. But even if I have not given you these four divisions, you see the photos and you can tell that the first person would be a strong character in the series. The second would be probably surviving till the end. Third would be a sidekick. And the fourth will just be there in the series to play kind of a delicate role. So you have four characteristics. And this is how people are chosen for a TV series or a movie and how the auditions go in. Now, this person would never be casted in a role of a hero or probably, somebody strong, because his facial characteristics are calm, more squarish, and he is appearing to be a more calm person. So if you come across these patients, you automatically choose the shape of your central incisor by seeing the face of the patient and their characteristics. So if you see a strong patient, you have these characteristics: dynamic, more angular face, wide mouth, calm. You will know it. So there is like no rocket science in it. You see, you talk to a lot of patients, you talk to everybody, even if they're not patients, start judging the characteristics of the patient. The more you are good at it, the more you will be able to give a better smile to the patient. So strong, you have long teeth. Dynamic, you can give slightly triangular teeth. Calm can be squarish teeth, and delicate can be more rounded teeth. But one thing I would want you to tell again here, a calm person might not want to appear as calm. Patient might appear very calm to you, but his persona might be strong. So according to him, when he goes out in the public, he wants to appear strong rather than calm. Then you really have to change the design and bring it to rectangular teeth rather than squarish. If you give him squarish teeth, he won't be happy. Even if they're best teeth in the world, he won't be happy. So it all depends on what the patient really wants and what you think is the best option for the patient. A smile. Now the smile can be of two types. It's generally a social smile or the enjoyment smile. Most of the time when the patient comes to your clinic, they will be giving you the social smile. They will be smiling with a little bit effort. If you take a photo in that frame of the patient's smile, you won't get the good result, because when the patient goes out in public, they will mostly be having this kind of a smile, which is called an enjoyment smile. So now you work as per the social smile. It looks fantastic in the clinic. Patient goes out with their friends, with their family, and then they come back to you in a month and they'll tell you, oh, I'm not happy with the smile. Now you have a photo, you have a record, everything looks great in the clinic. So you have to train your assistant that when you are taking photos, it is their job to make your patients smile and laugh. If you're not able to do that, you will be missing on a lot of smile design features, such as gingival architecture, the exact tooth length, the incisal exposure. There are so many things that can appear good only on this smile. They might look great when the patient is kind of a shy smile, but you really need to get this smile out of the patient. And how you do it? It's just crack some funny jokes, behave funny, or ask your assistant to talk anything funny or act funny. So a smile has got these components. You have the facial perception, the personality, of course, we discussed. The dentogingival aspect of it, we're going to discuss now, the dental aesthetics and the individual preferences. Sometimes you do everything, but individual preferences come as a last bang on your treatment plan. You do what you think is the best, but the patient will say, I don't like it. I want this. And then best ways to do it, take a consent, written consent, and do it. All right. So the dentogingival aesthetics, now it is the aesthetics that is the soft tissue and the hard tissue aesthetics. Most of the people, what I have seen, who come for repeat veneers or who have kind of done any prosthetic or restorative work done in their anteriors, are suffering from gingival inflammation. It will happen if the treatment is not done properly. And if it will happen if we have not taken the oral health into consideration before you start, we judge and we jump into treatment plans. We see a patient who's saying, I want veneers. You close your eyes, you just want to do veneers, make money out of it. Most of the people, I'm not saying everybody, of course, but some people will definitely just do veneers and give white teeth. Patient will be happy for some time. And then, I mean, it's not the right thing to do. So my treatment plan is always soft tissue to be in excellent health before we do any treatment. If the patient is not motivated, if the patient is not willing to go to that mile to correct the oral hygiene and soft tissue contours, then ideally you should not put your hand into that case. It will not make you sleep well. So you have the gingival contour. So you need to have the horizon of your upper central is higher than the lateral, and the canine almost matches with the central. So this should be the gingival architecture that you should have. If your lateral is long, central is short, that should be corrected first, and then you should go for your hard tissue correction. So everybody of us has seen these kind of cases. This might be with veneers, this might be with crowns, this might be with even a simple class 5 restoration, and you will see gingiva is like red, shouting for help, and it's all, the patient is having halitosis and it's in a mess. So as we grow, as things are changing, people are getting more educated, the expectations of patients are changing. Everybody's expectation of the dentist is high because, of course, they're paying you money. And second thing is they know more. So if they know more, their expectations are increasing. And so your work quality needs to increase as proportional value to the patient's expectation. So a restoration, even whatever restoration you do, be it a class 1 restoration or be it a full mouth rehabilitation, it all depends on 3 things: the form, the aesthetics, and the function. Any of these 3 things, if it is not right, you're going to ultimately end in a failure. That failure might be after 1 week, after 5 years, after 1 year, you don't know that. It all depends on patient's adaptability to what you have done. So the periodontal health is proportionate to the restoration longevity. So if you do a very good restoration, but if we have not taken care of periodontal health, it's not great. A point on this is, if you're doing an FPD by any chance, my suggestion to you is never double abut. So you should never have 2 teeth connected together thinking that it will be a bigger support for the FPD. And even if you're doing 2 crowns, never join them. Howsoever weak one tooth is, you think the other tooth is going to support it, never, ever, ever join 2 teeth together, because it's ultimately going to end up in a big time failure. So always each tooth should be treated as an individual unit. And my suggestion to you would be to never join 2 teeth together. All right. So moving on, for a good aesthetic outcome, what are the requisites that you will really need? Of course, you need to pay attention to the detail right from the patient when the patient steps in the clinic. You need to establish a diagnosis. So you need to sit, plan a treatment. It might appear as a simple aesthetic case, but it will have a lot of small things that you will really need to take care of before you can actually deliver the final result. Comprehensive treatment plan. Yep. So you should have that before you kind of do anything. And you should, of course, keep upgrading yourself, read articles, read new techniques, learn new techniques and attempt them. I know it sounds that if you learn something, it is difficult, hands shake when you really have to do something new, but unless you do it, I mean, you are not gonna remember. So my suggestion is go home. I mean, whenever your clinic opens, call the people that you know, just do a direct mock-up to learn, just to see how it looks, take some photos and you will know how much impact that has. So if anybody has done veneers, fantastic. If no, I mean, if some people have not attempted, then I would suggest to go for a case. The first case that you should do is with a thick biotype. A thick gingival biotype is kind of a very forgiving nature. Even if you make little mistakes with the margins and everything, you will not end up with a big problem. But if you just jump to a case with a very thin gingival biotype, then you're inviting trouble. So with people with thin gingival biotype, there is definitely some problem. The problem is the collagen is thin, the connective tissue is less. So any injury that you inflict on thin gingival biotype will either result in recession or gingival inflammation. So you will have problems. So if you're starting into aesthetic and veneer cases, just go and do with a thick gingival biotype. Attached gingiva, everybody these days, attached gingiva, yes, it is important. I will not say it is not important, but it is not very critical. So as per Lang and Low, they said like anything less than 2 millimeters of an attached gingiva around teeth or implants is not good. So you should first create that. But current consensus, if the patient is motivated, if he's able to maintain good oral hygiene, and if you have done a decent job, nothing is going to happen. I mean, I don't think if you keep margin supragingival, thick, thin gingival biotype, it doesn't really make much of a difference in those cases. Biological width always have to be respected. I mean, you cannot really play with it much. If you think that a margin is going subgingival and it is encroaching on your biological width, you need to create a new biological width first, wait for at least 6 weeks, and then go and kind of do your hard tissue. Ideally, you should wait for 3 months before you should do any hard tissue work after manipulation of any soft tissue. But sometimes it is not really possible to wait for 3 months. So minimum wait period is ideally 4 weeks, 1 month. Last thing in terms of the perio-restorative thing is the contour of the restoration. Now, a lot of times we have seen crowns like these, bulky crowns. I will not blame the dentist. I will not blame the technician. It's actually the fault of both the people if the patient leaves home with this kind of a crown, which you see on the left side. Now, this kind of a crown, if you see, there might be many problems. One, you have not reduced the tooth enough. If you have not reduced the tooth enough, technician doesn't have enough space to build up metal and ceramic or all ceramic, and you end up with a bulky crown. It will definitely end up with failure, and it will take 2 teeth along with it when it fails. So what you really need to see is basically the emergence angle and the profile. So anything, an angle more than 15 degrees here should be sent back to the lab. So this area should be as flat as possible. The area closest to the gingival margin, it should be as flat as possible. All right, so this was all about the soft tissue component, the dental composition. Now the midline is one of the biggest aspect of our aesthetic dentistry, and we don't really want the midline to shift a lot, but still it is not very critical. the 3 to 4 millimeters midline not coinciding with the face, or the upper and lower midlines not coinciding, is not a biggie. What is biggie is if you have a canted midline. So if you have a canted midline, it is a bigger problem than a straight midline which doesn't match. Symmetry. Now, is it overrated? I think sometimes it is. We try to kind of be very symmetrical and kind of spoil the case. So in this case, the center picture is actually a half cut picture which was flipped horizontal and attached to it. And it is the right side is complete replica of the left side. I don't think it looks good, that great. The left side, I mean, the rightmost picture is the actual photo. So if you have exactly the right side to the left side replicated, it always ends up in something which is not great. So you should have that a little bit of asymmetry. The central should ideally be very symmetric, but there should be starting to have a little bit asymmetry as you go posteriorly to give it a more natural look. So center lines, a straight center line is of course important. That is should be the main criteria. If you have a 3 to 4 millimeters here and there, don't worry about it. Don't really try to over trim the teeth to kind of match the midlines. But if you have a canted midline, yep, two ways to correct it. Either you refer to the orthodontist, get the midline straight, and then do your case, or you'll have to ultimately do a little bit of over aggressive treatment to make it straight. So that patient had a canted midline, was showing quite a bit, and we had to ultimately make it straight by doing a little aggressive treatment on tooth number 9. Incisor length. Now, how do you decide your incisor length? This is again one thing we are always in a dilemma. Where should we keep our incisor length? What will suit the patient? I mean, to decide the incisor length, best is to talk to the patient. You take 5 photos, but best result you will get is when you actually talk to the patient. What I like to follow is the 42.22 rule, which is a 2 millimeter distance from the lower vermilion border to the incisal edges, a 2 millimeter of gingival display at the excitement smile, and a 4 millimeter of incisal display for generally girls at rest, and 2 to 3 millimeters for men. So this is a good rule you can follow. And always ask the patient to talk words with F or V, and you should see where the incisal edge position is in relation to your lower lip. So if you have your lower lip, if your incisal edge is overlapping the vermilion border, that means you have kind of kept a length which is not the right length. Patient will have phonetic problems and aesthetic problems. So this is the best rule to kind of decide the length of the patient. And how to do it is basically you need to take some composite, apply it on the patient's teeth, decide in your mind what is right, make the patient sit straight, talk to the patient. If you think that length is okay, it's fine. If it is not okay, you add more. If you think it is too much, you reduce before you kind of go on to the remaining mock-up. So first thing is always in a case is to determine the length of the central incisor. Now that length can be built incisally or it can be built gingivally. Between central to lateral, lateral to canine, I mean, there are n number of proportions that are available in the literature. The two most important are the golden proportion, one is to 0.618, and the red proportion, that is a recurrent aesthetic dental proportion. What I use in my practice is recurrent aesthetic dental proportion, which is around 70%. So if you go with 62% of the golden proportions, then the lateral becomes very small compared to the central, and the canine becomes further smaller. It doesn't look good. So in a smile designing, most of the times golden proportion won't be working that great. So you need to have a red proportion, the proportion of an individual tooth. And now what is the length to the width ratio of central? Where should you actually keep it? So there are a lot of variations you can have. It will depend on the patient's face, the psychology of the patient, of course, but the best ratio is 80%. That is, if your central is around 10 millimeter long, the width should be around 8 millimeters. 75 and 85 both is acceptable. Going to 90% or 70%, it becomes too long or too short. So I would, whenever you tell the lab technician to design a smile for the patient, ask him to maintain these proportions. So he will measure it when he's doing the wax up. If you do the wax up on your own, of course, great. You can measure it yourself. but generally I like to keep it at 80 or 85% in most of my cases. The inclinations, we have already spoken about it. The contact areas, again, when you are doing individual teeth, the contact width is important. So the contact is most wider in the centrals, and the width of the contact keeps decreasing as you go distally. So the contact width between the central and the lateral will be shorter than the two centrals. And similarly, your incisal embragures will keep increasing in size if your contact area reduces. And this is again an important thing which we kind of tend to forget when we are doing freehand composites or if you don't have a good technician. So whenever you do anterior restorations, please maintain this incisal embragure. If your technician has forgotten to add these, take a diamond disc or take a Soflex polishing disc or any disc and create these contours. The result will change drastically. Last thing when we need to consider is the buccal corridor or the lateral negative space. You have the buccal corridor. The ideal buccal corridor width in the final result should be 1/3 of your combined width of your central to canine. So if my width from the central to the distal of the canine is around 10 millimeters, I mean 10 millimeters cannot be, but if it is 10 millimeters, then the width of the buccal corridor should ideally be 3 millimeters. If you go more than that, you will obliterate the buccal corridor, and anything less will have a really dark shadow in that area and it will not look that great. A lot of times you see people having veneers in which the buccal corridor has been completely obliterated. It will look fake from even a meter, even like a far distance. Patient is on the door, you will know that he has got veneers done. So if you have the buccal corridor maintained well, those natural shadows on the molars and the premolars, it looks really nice. So, I mean, in terms of what we have seen in this webinar till now is you need to see the psychology of the patient. I mean, each patient is different. Each smile has to be different. If your patient is paying you, go for 2 or 3 smile designs, make the patient comfortable, make the patient on the same page as you are on with the smile, and then you can do whatever you want to. If the patient is on the same page, it will help you to kind of have a satisfied patient in the end. So, I mean, I will show you a couple of cases that I have done. I mean, these are the full protocol that I generally follow with any of my case, and you will have a better idea of how things work. So a patient comes to me with poor anterior aesthetics. We take some pictures, we see what the problems are. Of course, ideally, this patient should have been referred to an orthodontist for correction. Patient was leaving the country and she wanted a quick fix. I am not really seller of veneers. I still refer all my patients to an orthodontist for an opinion to try to reduce the reduction of the teeth if it is possible. So you have this case. I mean, there is okay posterior support, not a really great posterior support, but it was enough for us to kind of do anterior veneer work without changing much of the vertical dimension or the anterior guidance. So, I mean, yep, we did some root canal, some crowns were done for the patient. I did a direct mock-up, showed it to the patient. Patient was sold at that time itself. I want this. It's not going to be easy, I know it. There's going to be a lot of reduction on a couple of teeth, but the direct mock-up looks good. I make an index. I mean, of course, after that, we send it to the lab. They do a mock-up, do a wax-up for the case. I make an index out of it. And then we do the preparation through the index, through the mock-up. So we do a mock-up and I do the preparation as a guided preparation through my mock-up. So I reduce the teeth the least that is required. Double chord retraction in most of this case because most of my margins went kind of equigingival or subgingival. An impression. Temporization should always be excellent. I would spend 1 hour on temporization if required, but when the patient goes home, the temporary should look very nice. I mean, even I know there are a couple of faults in this. This I corrected after seeing the photos, but it should be as polished as your final teeth. Final veneers, Emax pressed veneers, cementation, and this was the final, some onlays, veneers, some crowns, and the final result. The black triangle that you see here in this area got filled in a week's time because of the proper contact that was maintained. Final result, and that was probably it. Take you through a more complex case was a case that you saw during the beginning. Now this was again a full mouth case, which I did. Again, this is not to just show you what kind of work is done. It's just for you to know the protocol and to see how things can just work if you, and I don't have any digital support, just to let you know, this is all analog, all hand impressions, and all without any support of any digital, there's no digital workflow in this. Of course, it can be done with digital workflow, but still. So this patient, of course, has a lot of problems, small teeth, procline teeth, and was not happy with the smile. It was very difficult to get a smile out of this patient at this point of time. So we saw this, a lot of work has to be done. Some extraction was done for her, was an intraoral photo of the anteriors of the arches. So I did a gingivoplasty for this patient. Actually, I reflected the flap, some bone was reduced to help maintain the new biological width. And after this, we waited for a month before we did anything to the patient. Patient had poor lower crowns. We removed them. One had got a really bad amalgam core in it. But again, I am still in a zone where I would like to save a tooth if it is possible. Of course, if it is possible, and if we are able to have some good tooth structure. We raised the bite of this patient by a principle called as Dahl's principle. What I do in this is I built the lower anteriors a little bit with composite so that I have a posterior disocclusion of around 1 millimeter. And then we leave the patient for around 6 weeks, letting the posterior supraerupt. And that will kind of open the bite for us. This is not to be done in cases which need excessive bite opening. This is only for a case where you need that extra millimeter for the restoration thickness to come into the picture without reducing the teeth too much. Because the problem is the supraeruption of the tooth is not controlled. And ultimately, you might end up with a changed centric by the time your tooth has supraerupted. So you can do this in almost all the cases, because in most of the cases, you really don't need more than 1 millimeter or a half posterior separation. So we had, when I put the composite, we had a little bit of posterior separation. This was more than enough for me to have a good restoration. This was a healed gingiva after the end of 1 month. There was still a bit of redness, but there was no bleeding on probing when I checked. Veneer crowns were prepped. This was a temporary when the patient went home. The lower tooth, which was so black here, we kind of managed to get it over here. Removed the core, did some internal bleaching, had some good tooth, built a nice core. I don't use posts. So posts is 99% of the cases, I don't prefer posts, because when you have a post, it doesn't serve any extra purpose. So if you have if you are able to manage a 2 millimeter tooth structure, just kind of remove some GP from the root canal area and then just do a nice composite. So you have a good core. So posts, I really don't do much. Final result with all the Emax veneers and crowns done. Here are the final result from that. So we reached from there to there in a period of 6 months. So you don't really do this in a week's time. This kind of cases need time. The patient needs to be motivated. The oral hygiene the patient maintained was excellent. And then only you are kind of in a situation where you will be able to do a good job. So this was one case. And finally, one last case in which you will be able to see patient came to me, extra wide veneers. He was okay with it. I didn't like them at all. So I told him, the buccal corridor you can see was completely obliterated. It was obliterated to an extent, even the second premolar was touching the lower lip. The aesthetics was bad. They were quite bulky. The gingiva had problems. There was a lot of subgingival calculus around these veneers. So we decided, of course, to change them. Removed all the veneers. Some teeth were excessively prepped, so I couldn't help it. they had cavities in between. So I had to go for a little extra preparation. But you look at the preparation, how nicely polished is it? So whenever you do a veneer prep, my suggestion to you is to kind of polish it nicely. So you use the prep burr, then the yellow stone burr, sorry, the yellow band burr. Then I generally try to use a disc to do a final polish of my preparations. Your final restorations, Emax veneers, cementation, done. So we kind of got a little bit of the buccal corridor. Okay, so that was kind of a change. Color we didn't change too much because patient was kind of used to that color and he didn't want a much yellower color to it. So we made it a little yellow, but not like, of course, too yellow. But see the difference in the length. There's a lot of difference in the bulk, the contact areas, I mean, and the buccal corridor, of course. So this was the change in the smile. Increase the length. We kind of, the smile was very flat in the pre-op case, kind of gave a nice lower lip contour to the smile and end result. And yep, so that was the final picture. So I think I am done for today, Ruben.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Ritul.
Thank you
for the
Thanks
lovely
a lot.
session.
Thank you I mean, if anybody wants to get in touch, of course, I am on Instagram, and I kind of post a lot of literature on my Instagram, which is kind of very recent. And this is all if you free. So if anybody wants to have recent literature, they can just follow me on Instagram and they will have access to the recent literature as recent as 2020 articles, which are summarized and put on my stories.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ritul. Friends, I'd like to request you to kindly quickly take a photograph or a screenshot so that you can stay in touch with Dr. Ritul. You can follow him on his Instagram handle. It's very clearly mentioned on the screen. Please do follow him right now so that you don't miss it. All right. I guess you've done that. Thank you very much, Dr. Ritul. And I request you to kindly stop your screen share for a moment.
Yeah.
Friends, we have close to 2 minutes of your time to note down the questions. In the meanwhile, I'd quickly like to give you a walkthrough of dentistchannel.online. Friends, this is dentistchannel.online. This is me, Ruben, your host for this session. It was once again a lovely session, and it was a great opportunity to have each and every one of you during this live webinar. Like always, today also, I'd like to request you with just one thing, and that is to subscribe to our channel so that you can stay in touch with us, so that you get notifications on the latest webinars and on the upcoming webinars that we have planned for you. We've planned all of this only for you so that you don't miss out with continuous dental education. So our live dental webinar series is going to end shortly. Before that, we're going to have some power-packed scientific presentations like the one that we have today, which was of Dr. Ritul, of course, which was a fantastic presentation like you've mentioned. So for that, I request you to kindly follow dentistchannel.online on our social channels, which is YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Also, do not forget to stay in touch with Dr. Ritul, our speaker for today. Please do visit our page. We are called www.dentistchannel.online. There's a lot of information that would be helpful to you, or that would be helpful to your dental colleagues. Please do stay in touch. That's the only request that I have. You can log on to our channel, www.dentistchannel.online, and you can benefit from the array of scientific articles, blogs, etc. that we have. Also, I would like to request you to kindly share about our work and do let everyone know what dentistchannel.online is. Once again, it's a sincere request. We would highly appreciate if you stay in touch with us simply by subscribing to our Facebook, to our YouTube, and to our Instagram channels. An e-certificate of participation for today's webinar would be only given to you upon your request. I repeat, an e-certificate of participation would be only given to you upon your request. For that, I request you to kindly mention your name and the name of the webinar on the below mentioned WhatsApp number. An e-certificate of participation would be only given to you upon your request. Kindly mention your name and the name of the webinar on the below mentioned WhatsApp number. Thank you very much, Dr. Ritul. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Before we move on to the live question and answer session, there is a very common question that I had. I thought I would want you to answer that before we move on to the live question and answer session. The
Yep.
question says you had mentioned about the exam in the former part of your presentation. Could you please give a brief about the exam?
No, I think what they want to know about the exam is the Royal College exam, or it was just a normal example of, how things are these days. And I mean, everything that you go, a lot of people go and do give exams and they don't really kind of, it's always kind of to know better about the pattern of exam rather than what is going to come in the exam. So if you crack the code of the exam is what you really need to know most of the time. So that was my basic, I mean, kind of example that I was giving initially. That I mean, 70% of the paper is what you need to really concentrate on. If you don't even have the 30%, you don't know it, it's all right. I mean, it's okay.
Thank you very much, sir. There is another. Sorry, there is another important, very common question. Do you conduct courses in Dubai?
Yes, I do conduct courses. I mean, I've been conducted from past 2 years, and thing is now because of the coronavirus, everything is kind of thing. But I just keep putting the details up on my LinkedIn or on my Instagram. So if you would want to know when is the next one, you would know it by in LinkedIn or Instagram. I mean, it's a 2 days workshop. So one day we have a 9-hour lecture in which I kind of talk about what I've spoken about right now. Plus there's an additional presentation on planning to preparation, basically what you really need to do before you actually start preparing the teeth. The third presentation is on how to prepare your teeth. What are the things that you really need to look for? The fourth presentation is on soft tissue and temporization. And this is day 1 schedule. And day 2 is a full day hands-on workshop, which is direct mockup, indirect mockup. You have special models that I've made on which you can do veneer preps and temporization. And then we have a lecture on cementation. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Now we can start with the live question and answer session. The first question is from Dr. Shweta Shetty. Sometimes after a few months of smile designing, the patient ends up having a black triangle between the incisors. What's the cause for it and how to correct it?
I mean, the problem with that would be two. One, either the contact area was not placed in the right position. So ideally, the distance between the bone and the contact portion should not be more than 5 millimeters. So if you have that, then you might have a black triangle that is developed. Second thing is if your if your contour of the restoration is not great, especially in the mesial proximal areas, that will cause, if it is a thin biotype, that will cause the gingiva to recess. And if it was a thick gingival biotype case, you would develop a gingival inflammation in most of the cases. So two most important things in that is, one is to kind of maintain a good oral hygiene, keep the contact area in the right place, and thirdly, have a good reduction done on the proximal areas, which most of us kind of tend to forget. We concentrate more on the labial preparation of the veneers. We kind of forget to prepare the proximal areas for the veneers.
Thank you very much, sir. We move on to the next question. This is a question from Dr. Kriti Dubey. What is the difference between 2D and 3D smile design?
2D and 3D smile, these are all terms. 3D smile design is basically you do a mock-up and you kind of show it to the patient in the patient's mouth. That is 3-dimensional. And 2-dimensional is what you do on these software. So there is no depth to it. That's why it looks good on laptop and on your tablets. But when you actually want to replicate that in the patient's mouth, you ultimately kind of end up with bigger problems than you would have anticipated when you were actually working on your tablet. So it's always better to go. Of course, it is very good if you have, each case for digital smile designing, most of the softwares charge around 99 to 100 euros to do one case and send you printed models. But would you be able to spend that much of money from your pocket for every patient? I'm doubtful and even I wouldn't be kind of in a situation to spend 100 euros for every patient.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
I hope the question was answered. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next question. This is a question from Dr. Niharika. Can you give tips for tooth preparation for full ceramic crowns?
For full ceramic crowns, for any preparation that I do, it's basically a very fixed. I can show you one slide. Let me just find it. Ruben, you can ask me the next question. I'll find the next one slide to show it to them. That's all.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Yeah.
The next question is from an anonymous attendee. Which material is used for intraoral mock-up?
I generally like to use, you can use any temporary material. So it's not about the brand that you have. What I generally like to use is called TurboTemp. I mean, TurboTemp is slightly better than ProTemp. You can search the brand of TurboTemp actually, and I don't know if it is available in India or I mean, it's available here in UAE. So when you do the mock-up in the mouth, the TurboTemp becomes very thin and very easy to remove the excess. You won't have the excess in the patient's mouth when you actually kind of do the mock-up. So any temporary material is fine for indirect mock-up. If you want to do a direct mock-up, any composite should work. I generally prefer a bleach white shade for a direct mock-up.
Thank you very much, sir. Should I ask you the next question?
Yes, you can
All right.
ask. Yeah.
All right, sure. The next question is from Dr. Prathamesh. Which software do you use for showing the smile design?
I generally don't do a digital smile designing in most of my cases because it is of no use. I mean, I don't think anybody seeing that on a, it doesn't look nice one. I mean, if I have to do it, I do it in a software called Affinity, which is, I will just again show you that so you have an idea. This is available on Mac. If it is open, I'll share my screen once. Yeah. So this is for the question that was asked before. This is the only armamentarium generally I have it with me in my preparation kit. Okay, so Ruben, you can see, right?
Yes, sir.
Yep, so you have a very coarse diamond burr. I always like to have a very thick burr for my preparations. Whatever you read in the books, I mean, they are very conservative preparations, to be honest with you. I mean, you will say that, I mean, textbook is textbook, of course. We have all learned from textbooks, but not everything that you read can be clinically be fine because not every technician is good. So you need to give the technician a slightly extra room to work on so that you don't end up with bulky restorations. So I generally like to do around 1.5 to 2 millimeters reduction occlusally for a all ceramic crown, and almost the same 1.5 to 2 millimeters all around with around a millimeter of my thickness of my margin. And margin is mostly equigingival. And I always use a thick one. Then I have the thin one, thin like the yellow band to polish my preparation. And always choose a wide burr. Don't have a thin, narrow needle burr. You will end up with a lip on the edges and you will not be happy with your preparation. So you should have a thick burr. And at the end, I always polish it up with any disc, whichever disc I have. I mean, I have a super snap disc, which is good, and it can be used in most of the cases. And the software that was asked to me about was, yeah, so I have used this Affinity Photo. This software is good. I mean, you can do tons of stuff. It needs, of course, some amount of training. There are hundreds of videos available online, which can help you in training, but almost like Photoshop. So if you know Photoshop, this will be easy. But I mean, you can learn everything. There's nothing that you cannot learn. So, I mean, I've been learning this myself since in this quarantine period, but it's a good software to kind of do your smile designing on.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for answering to both the questions. Moving on to the next question. This is a question from Dr. Roy. Precautions to take in patients with gingival hypertrophy, patient taking nifedipine, CCB.
Now, these patients who come to you with having severe gingival atrophy, gingival hypertrophy, my suggestion would be to kind of, some drugs can, if the drug can be changed, you can talk to the physician first. And if the drug can be changed, if substitute can be given, that is the number one option. Second thing is, if it requires some kind of surgery, you should first do the soft tissue surgery using a laser or a scalpel to kind of bring the gingival health to normal. Wait for around 3 to 4 months to see if the gingiva grows back again or if the health is okay. If nothing happens and the gingiva maintains its texture and consistency, I mean, then you can go ahead. But you, of course, cannot start the case if the patient has got any gingival problems, be it recession, be it inflammation, be it hypertrophy. It has to be corrected first before you can actually do anything.
Thank you very much, sir. Moving on to the next question. Question from Dr. Abhishek. What is the 42.2 rule?
So 42.2 rule is an arbitrary rule. I mean, it's a rule that can just help you in guiding where you should keep your incisal edge. So the best way to do is when you do an incisal mock-up. Okay, so what I generally do in my patients is I build up the central with composite. I make the patient sit straight, and then I start talking to the patient. It can be anything. You can talk, even ask the patient to say 1, 2, 3. But the best is to have any words with F and V, because F and V are the two consonants which kind of, when you speak, the incisal edge touches the vermilion border of the lower lip. So the 42.2 rule is 4 millimeter of the incisal display at rest. This is generally for females. If it is a male patient, and if it's an older male patient, it can be up to 2 millimeters only. 2 millimeters of gingival display at normal smile, and 2 millimeters of distance between the vermilion border of your lower lip and your central incisor at rest. So if you have lesser distance, that means when the patient will say F and V, the incisal edge will cross the vermilion border and will not be very aesthetic.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Dr. Samia. Patient with veneers undergoing gingival treatment, will the veneers get damaged? If so, how to rectify it?
Patient already has veneers and gingival treatment is required, or you need to do a gingival treatment before the veneers?
Well, it says veneers, patient with veneers undergoing gingival treatment.
Yeah, so I mean, see again, so these are all the things that should ideally be mentioned in the consent form that you take a signature on from the patient. That I mean, later when they go for scaling or any gingival treatment, there's a very high chance that the veneer might chip, especially when you go for feldspathic veneers or you're going for very thin veneers. They have a very high tendency to kind of chip if you're doing scaling with an ultrasonic scaler, or you are doing, I mean, if you're doing any gingival surgery, it shouldn't make a difference. Maximum is what will happen is your margin might get visible after the soft tissue is healed. You can always tell the patient that we might have to, I mean, if it is your patient, you can always replace that veneer after the gingival treatment is done. But that thing should always be conveyed to the patient that it's best that the patient maintains the oral hygiene at home with proximal floss, interproximal brushes, and regular dental checkup. But yeah, there's a very high chance of those Emax and feldspathic veneers getting fractured while scaling. So you have to be very careful with that.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Dr. Geeta. Do you always advise for night guards after all veneer cases?
See, night guard I always advise it. Some patients accept it, some patients don't, because of course there's an additional charge to it. Some patients who have already paid for it. But in any patient, I do a single implant also, or any patient like in which I have done a full mouth or a lot of restorations, I just give it without charging the patient. So most of my cases have a night guard with them. This is for the longevity of the restorations that you have put so much of time and effort, and patient has paid for it a lot. So it's best to have a night guard done at the end of the procedure.
Treatment options for anterior traumatic teeth with regards to aesthetic.
Again, it depends on the class of fracture the patient has come to you with, and also if there's any associated tooth fractures. So it will all depend on if it is a small chip, you can just polish it off. If it is a slightly bigger chip, you can repair it with composite. Direct composite works very well. Just take care that the margin of the composite is not contacting the lower incisors. If it is a bigger chip, you might probably have to do a temporary composite buildup, wait for around 2 months to check if the tooth gets non-vital, do a root canal, and then you can do a veneer on it if there's enough tooth structure left. If it is a big fracture, then of course you will have to go with a crown. And if there's fracture of the root, you have to extract the tooth and do an immediate implant. So it all depends on the fracture class of the incisor.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Dr. Prathamesh. How to match a single veneer shade matching?
That is the most complex treatment that anybody can attempt, like matching. So I generally never recommend a single veneer. Even if I do a veneer on one tooth, I tell the patient that it's best to go for the veneer on the other central as well. But if the patient is not agreeing, I have done cases with single crowns and veneers, but it's just that it might take a couple of visits to ultimately cement the crown. So you should, and the best is to call in the technician who's actually going to do the ceramic work and let them assess the shade. Sorry, let them assess the shade themselves. So if they are the best people, because they are actually going to do the ceramic work. And otherwise, if the technician cannot come, you can take some pictures. You can take a gray card picture. And if you have enough inventory, you can have Polaroid filters attached to your flashes and you can take a polarized photo. But then that is, I mean, I think it's a kill for a single crown. So best is to either call for a technician or do 2-3 times. You tell the patient initially itself that it might take a couple of attempts to match the shade perfectly.
Thank you, sir. Next question from Dr. Shruti. Could you share some information on temporization?
For temporization, I mean, there are a couple of techniques that I use to do temporization in my veneer cases. One is the index that you had made initially for the mock-up. You can use the same thing to do the temporization. The teeth have to be dry. I don't etch, I don't bond. There is not even a spot etching. I only rely on the shrinkage of my temporary material. So I take the temporary material in my index, put it on the prepared teeth. I wait a little extra compared to what I would have waited if I'm doing just a mock-up, because I know that this has to stay in the mouth for 3-4 days at least. So I wait for it to shrink a little bit. I take it out and just polish it. And there's something called as GC coat. You can apply it on the veneers to give it a final shine. And the second technique that I use is a clear index, which you can use to kind of do half and half. So you do half teeth with the temporary material and the top half, which is near the gingiva, with freehand composite. And the instruction that I gave it to the patient is only one. Patient has to be on smoothies and only on smoothies and soft food for the time the temporary is in the mouth. So that much patient has to kind of understand. But it is sometimes becomes very difficult to take them out after 4 days. So you don't need to etch, bond, or do anything. The material shrinks nice enough to hold on to the teeth.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Dr. Deepa Kumari. Do dental veneers tend to break off easily? And how long do veneers last?
So what I tell my patients is there are 2 types of successes that you are looking at. One is the aesthetic life and one is the functional life of the veneer. So in my consent form, which I take a signature from my patient, I don't commit anything. First of all, remember never to commit anything to the patient, because the moment you commit anything to the patient, you give guarantees, warranties to the patient will not take you seriously. They'll be like, forget about it. You know, I have this warranty, I can do whatever I want, and they will have to replace it. So in my consent form, there is no guarantee warranty. But what I tell is there's approximately a 10-year functional survival rate for a veneer and a 5-year aesthetic survival rate for a veneer. That is an average success rate. But they can fracture earlier and they might last for 15-20 years as well in the mouth without giving any problem. So it all depends on the patient, how they take care of the stuff that you have actually put in the mouth and what kind of adhesive cement you have used to cement the veneer onto the tooth. Yeah, but of course, veneer fractures, veneer chip is a common occurrence. Patient should be prepared for it. So don't lie to the patient. I mean, that's the best way to be in the game.
Thank you, sir. A few more questions. Question from Dr. Mohammed Salman Akhtar. What is the minimum thickness of the veneer that can be safely given without compromising the aesthetics and the strength?
See, again, thickness of a veneer will all depend on what you are trying to achieve. Okay, so if you have a very small tooth which has got spaces around it, you hardly have to prepare the tooth. You might not even prepare the tooth. I'm not in favor of prepless veneers, because if you have a prepless veneer, you always tend to have bulky veneers and gingival inflammation. So of course, a little bit of prep is definitely required. But if it's a non-vital tooth or tetracycline stained tooth, the prep can go up to 1 millimeter. And if it is just if the tooth is otherwise healthy and you're only planning to change the shape of the tooth, your prep can be 0.3 to 0.5 millimeters. And if you are planning to change the shade of the teeth, it can be up to 0.8 millimeters. So, I mean, but yeah, it is very difficult to measure. That's why it's best to work through the through the mock-up. So if patient is happy with the mock-up and that is the final result that is you are going to give to the patient, and then, it is fine with whatever you do. But ideally 0.5 to 0.8 is the reduction of the teeth in most of the cases.
Thank
and
you,
most
sir.
of my
Next
preparations
question.
and most of my preparations are without anesthesia. So I try to work without anesthesia when I'm doing veneer prep. So I know when I'm very close to the dentine. And but if I have to go into the dentine, I go. But most of the time I try to avoid going into the dentine.
Thank you very much. Next question from Dr. Prathamesh. What type of tooth preparations do you prefer, a butt joint or a wrap around preparation for veneers?
Always a butt joint. All the preps are all incisal butt joint preparations. There's never an incisor overlap unless, I would want to change the incisal guidance. But then if I have to change the incisal guidance along with a labial overlap, then it's preferably a full crown. So yeah, but it's always an incisal vertical. Just cut the incisal edge horizontally. That's all. And you have the butt joint.
Thank you, sir. This is more or less, the next question is more or less like a suggestion that she is asking for. He's
Yeah.
asking for question from Dr. Deepak. Hello, sir. I just want to ask you a question about a bad prosthesis. One patient visited me having pain beneath crown and having some bleeding sometime from crown, maybe due to subgingival preparation. In that case, what kind of treatment plan can we decide in low vertical height crown?
Again, then this case might be a very complicated case. What I would do is first take an IOPA, check the status of the tooth, that is the pain from the gingiva or is the pain from the tooth. So if the pain is, you are assuming that the tooth is okay, root canal has been done or not done, and the tooth is not giving the pain, then my first treatment is to just remove that crown. So we remove the crown, wait for around a week's time. Even if it's a short height, I understand the upper tooth can supra-erupt, so I don't wait for a longer time. But we just to check if the pain was from the crown. So once the gingiva is healed a little bit, you can, the problem is not with subgingival margins actually. The problem is more because how the contour of the old restoration would have been. It would have been encroaching on the biological width or on the soft tissue space. So I'll go for a thinner restoration. Maybe I can go for an Emax crown, which can be pressed into a thinner section rather than going for a, what do you call, a zirconia crown. And second thing is, if you think that margin is too subgingival, then I would have to evaluate if I can do some crown lengthening and create a new biological width to reduce the gingival inflammation.
Thank you, sir. Question from Dr. Aditya. Can we happen to do or place veneers immediately after frenectomy or a gingivectomy?
No. I have told you, any soft tissue even after you do a simple scaling, you ideally have to wait a month to do anything. You touch the soft tissue, that means your treatment is prolonged for more than 3 months. So if the patient is not maintaining good oral hygiene, you have to do any soft tissue procedure, you wait. You always wait if you want a good result. If you don't, if you are not, yeah, of course, you would want the good result. So 3 months ideally, but 1 month minimum, I will say, to wait.
Thank you, sir. Next question from Dr. Charanjit. What is the full form of red in red proportion?
It is called recurrent aesthetic dental proportion. So it is basically ideally 70%. So instead of keeping a golden proportion of 62%, so that is the 62% of the central is the lateral, I keep it as 70 or 71% of my, so if my central is 10 millimeter wide, my lateral will be 7 millimeter wide, not 6 millimeter wide. That kind of gives me a little better aesthetics compared to the golden proportion.
Thank you, sir. Few more questions. Question from Dr. Aditya. Can we proceed with line 1 treatment for 1/3 crown fracture? That is placing the broken crown with aesthetic dentistry dental composites. What would you suggest?
If the patient has the fractured segment, of course, that is the first line of treatment. You can, because that gives the best aesthetics. You should have a really good etching and bonding. You can prepare the tooth a little bit, roughen it. If you have an intraoral sandblaster, you can roughen the edges of the tooth in the mouth after a rubber dam application and also the fractured segment and bond it. It stays nicely, and just make sure that the contact is not on the margin of the fractured segment. So of course, yes, you can always join the fractured segment if the patient has it. And that gives you a little bit time more to evaluate if the tooth is getting non-vital to do any more more final treatment kind of thing for the patient. So yeah.
Thank you, sir. Next question from Dr. Manasi. Principles of visual perception and their clinical application to denture aesthetics.
This is a very vague question. Visual, most of the dentistry is actually visual. You have these parameters available to you, which help you in kind of guiding your treatment. But if you do a denture and you follow all the principles written in the book, which are kind of fine, but if it doesn't look good, it's a failure. So, also in terms of visual perception for the patient, I never give a mirror to the patient. It's always generally talks on photographs on the screen, because the moment you give a mirror to the patient, they will try to look for things that are not existing. So, I mean, yeah, I don't really get that question well. I'm sorry for that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ritul. With that, we come to an end of the lovely question and answer session. There is this one particular thank you message that I thought I'd like to share, which says very informative session. Thank you, Dr. Ritul. This session will be helpful in converting patients. Well, if that's the case, then definitely I'm sure you're also happy about that. Once again, thank you, Dr. Ritul,
Thank you, Ruben. Thank you.
Thank you very much
everybody.
on behalf of Team DentistChannel.online for your valuable time. Friends, if you've definitely liked this webinar, please do share the recorded webinar with all your dental colleagues. I'm sure more and more people would want to know more about principles of anterior aesthetics. Do get in touch with Dr. Ritul for any of your doubts with regards to the topic or with regards to anything in general.
You can just message me anytime and I'll be more than happy to answer anything.
Thank you very much, sir. With this, we come to an end. Thank you all, and may you all have a good day.